Welcome to Solo Travel Adventures, my sisters. Don't let fear hold you back from traveling alone. I want you to gather your courage, listen to inspiring stories, and learn how to travel solo while safely navigating new places from this show. I'm Cheryl Esch, solo travel advocate and travel coach, and I want you to have a transformative experience when you travel solo. So pack your bags, book your flight, and check one more time for that passport. It's time to explore the world. Hello, sister travelers. Welcome back to Solo Travel Adventures. Now, if you live in the Northern Hemisphere, it's summertime, and I don't know about you, but I'm in Texas where the temperatures have been in the triple digits for several weeks. It feels like I'm talking 106 a few times this week, 104. I mean, it is sweltering, and I am so looking forward to some cooler weather. And I did have an opportunity to experience a little bit of that when I went to Colorado about a week ago. But I'm back in the heat, and believe it or not, I'm thinking about wintertime and Christmas travel, which you should also be thinking about. You think, oh my gosh, I can't think about Christmas right now. I'm in summertime still. I'm still maybe on my summer vacation, or maybe you still have some kids around and you're trying to plan, them back to school, right? I just sent my youngest back to college, so I completely get that. But I'm coming to you today because I need to share with you 5 tips to finding cheaper holiday flights. Okay, so that time, as we know, between Christmas and New Year's is one of the most expensive times for flights, for travel in general. And in general, the time period that tends to increase in price is December 17th through roughly January 7th. So those are dates where, finding cheap flights is going to be really challenging. So I'm here to give you a couple tips to maybe work around some of that. And that number one tip here is you want to book about 5 months out, which is right now. Okay, so we're in August. I'd say right now, book those flights for your Christmas and even Thanksgiving holidays right now, if that's what you celebrate. And look at the dates. Christmas does fall on a Monday this year, so it kind of makes it a little awkward in trying to book those flights or getting the most out of your time off from work, possibly, right? Now, number 2, to get a cheaper flight, and I can attest to this, is you want to travel on the holiday itself. Okay, so Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day, those 3 days, if you actually fly on those 3 days, not only are you going to get cheaper flights, but you're going to have less packed plane. But 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years this Christmas, that I did fly on Christmas Day in the morning. Of course, you want those early morning flights. And there was literally, I had the whole row to myself. I could actually have laid down and taken a nap on my flight. So you're going to have less people on flights because they already want to be at their destination by that point. But if you are truly solo traveling and you have that flexibility and you just want to be somewhere else for the holidays, then you can consider flying on those specific days. Now, they also say avoid, December 23rd and December 26th, or the day before a holiday and the Sunday after a holiday. That is a generalization. However, because of how Christmas Eve and Christmas Day are falling this year, that gets a little wonky, right? So Christmas Eve is on Sunday. Obviously, flying on Sunday in general may be a little more expensive. And Christmas Day is on Monday. Likewise with New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And then you have Thanksgiving on Thursday. So Thanksgiving, let's talk about that first. Obviously, lots of people are going to be flying the day before, right? Or maybe on a Tuesday. So, that's just consideration to, think about. Then everybody's going to be flying home on Sunday after Thanksgiving because they got to get back to their work week possibly. So maybe try to work around those days and try to avoid flying on those days. Now for Christmas, because of how it falls, I imagine a lot of people are going to be flying on Friday, the Friday before, and maybe even Thursday evening to kind of get a jump on things. So consider traveling maybe on the holiday itself. Or number 3, extend your trip to avoid the rush and to avoid the higher cost on those days. So extending your trip, meaning before or after the holiday, maybe extend it a little further out so you're not traveling on those heavy travel days. All right. We know that not only do airports get very busy and very packed, but there is more likelihood of delays and also a likelihood of, the airlines often overbook, right? So there's always that chance. So if you're considering extending your trip before or after the holiday, that might help bring down the price a little bit and you're going to avoid the rush. Now, tip number 4 is check alternative airports. So if you live in I live in DFW Metroplex, so we have more than one airport, but also I could easily drive to Houston and catch a flight. Or if you live somewhere where you might just drive 2 hours to another airport, you may consider looking at flights out of different airports and checking out what the cost may be, because sometimes it could be cheaper somewhere else versus maybe out of your home airport. And you can do kind of playing around with that. If you have a destination in mind, you can go into Google Flights and just do a little search. Put in your dates, of course, and play around with, if you know your destination, you can leave that there, but maybe play around with what airport you're flying out of to see what kind of prices come up. You can also look at which days are going to be cheaper on the front or back end of those holidays. So check out alternative airports. And number 5, believe it or not, consider international flights because they actually can be cheaper during the holiday season versus domestic flights. Now, domestic flights, most people are wanting to go home and visit family during the holidays. So that makes sense that domestic flights are going to be more expensive. But again, if you are a solo traveler and just want to get away for the holidays, you could consider flying internationally, right, during the holiday season. I'll give you just a couple examples of some cheap flights I found internationally. New York to London nonstop. I just found a flight today for $5.90. New York to Porto, Portugal, $6.34, again, nonstop. And then I did a little fun out of London. So let's say you're in Europe, right? Obviously, traveling within Europe is actually pretty cheap. And so I did look at that. So if you are in Europe and you want to go to another European nation, most of your flights are very reasonable during the holidays. But let's say you are in London and I saw a flight to Cairo for only $6.27. London to Istanbul, $3.46. That's amazing. So I would say even, if you're a savvy traveler and maybe you want to get to Istanbul and you're coming maybe from the States and you don't mind sort of this flight hopping, all right, where maybe you get a flight somehow from where you are to London. And then you book that flight from London to Istanbul for $3.46 round trip, right? From London to Santorini, Greece was only $4.82. So that makes sense that those are a little more reasonably priced. So I know it's only August, but Sisters, please, if you do plan to get out there and travel for Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving even, you need to be booking your flights right now. So maybe you haven't decided where you're going and you have that freedom to take that look and just kind of play around in Google Flights as to where you might be able to spend your wonderful holiday, maybe solo, in a wonderful place and not pay an arm and a leg for it, right? Unfortunately, I was trying to find a flight to Costa Rica over that week of Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's, and haven't had much luck finding any cheap flights. I've tried several different airports in Costa Rica to see if that would help, and it just wasn't quite right, because I know I've seen, and I know if I travel off season, like not during holiday season, that from Texas to Costa Rica, I could get easily a flight for about $375 or so round trip to Costa Rica on the off season, not during peak season, and of course not during this holiday season. So that trip for me, I think, is going to need to wait, because I love cheap flights, and for me, traveling to a place where I'm not spending $1,000 or more on an airfare allows me to use some of that money for other things during my travels, or to even book another flight, right? So sisters, get out there right now, and if you plan to do Christmas travel, go ahead and book that. Go ahead and get that booked right now, and enjoy your holiday. I know it's hard to think about right now in the midst of this heat wave we might be having, but this is something you need to start to consider. Hey, sister travelers, did this podcast inspire and encourage you, or move you to get out there and travel? Wonderful. There are 3 ways you can thank me. First one is leave a written review for the show on Apple Podcast. 2, share the show with your sister travelers, your friends, your family. And 3, subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. And thank you again for listening to the show. Sisters, be fearless, take the leap, and get out there and have an adventure.